So every one of you wants a nice wide butterfly flare so you can take away lots of the ice. So today you're in luck because we're gonna head back in the gym. I'm gonna show you my 3 top mobility drills for improving that butterfly flare that you're probably not doing, not sort of the same regular ones that everybody does. So by the end of this video, you're gonna have 3 strategies that open up flexibility in your hips, teach you to use the right muscles to help you get that flare, and more importantly, to keep that flare as you push across, because it also doesn't help you if you have a wide flare, but then as soon as you push across, it folds behind you. So let's head back to the lab and take a look at those.
Yo, what the fuck?
So let's get right into it. Let's look at 3 of the strategies you can use to give yourself not only a wider butterfly flare on the ice, but also, to give you that control. So when you're sliding across, your pad isn't folding in behind you. Another little advantage of that is you're actually developing hip stability, which helps reduce the wear and tear on your hips so that you're spending more time on the ice playing the game and less time hopefully in physiotherapy or sitting on the bench waiting for your hip or groin to heal. So we're going to start with self-myofascial release. So working on tissue quality, because if our tissue is restricting our ability to move, then we can try to stretch as much as we want, but if the connective tissue that surrounds our muscle tissue, and they're different tissues, is kind of adhered down or bonded down to the underlying muscle, then again, we can pull on it and try to stretch that muscle, but it's not going to give. So we need to get in there and kind of do a little bit of this, break some of those bonds, get the fascia and the muscle moving nicely, and then that unlocks some flexibility that really we almost have in there, but we just can't use. So we're going to start with 3 basic areas. The first one is just going to be the hip flexor. So we're going to find sort of that bundle of muscle in the front of your hip. So if I lie my thumb across the front of my hip and lift my leg, I feel almost like a cable. So that's going to be our rough landmark, and we're going to get in on that. And then we can roll around a little bit and see if we find an area that, that feels a little bit tighter, or really it'll probably feel a little bit tender. Then you can just park there and spend a little extra time working on that. The next one we're going to do is a little hard to find, but if you put your hand on the outside of your hip, you'll feel a bony prominence, or sometimes we even just rotate our hip around and you can feel it kind of coming in and out of prominence here at the side. And then what you're going to do is you're going to come forward and up a little bit. You almost find a little bit of a soft spot. That's where I'm going to put the lacrosse ball, and then I'm going to lie right on that. And usually when we do this, we get what's called a positive jaw drop sign, which is, it's not very comfortable and people go, they drop their jaw. So this one we're not really going to roll around on a lot. We're just going to find that tender spot and then sit there and let that tension try to just melt away and just relax the best you can. The last area we're going to get is just our glutes. And don't just get sort of the part of your glutes that you sit on. Think about also getting that upper glute, so kind of leaning back and getting your glutes where it comes in to the top of your pelvis as well. But usually when we do the glutes, we roll kind of from our hip bone towards our bum crack, sort of on that type of angle. And if you find that tender spot, a really tender spot, or a really tight spot, then again, just sit on that, keep some pressure there, and try to get that tension to melt away. And you can start with about 30 seconds on each side, on each area with that. And I'm just using a regular lacrosse ball. You can use a tennis ball, a medicine ball, whatever you have available at home. I like the ball a little better than a foam roller because it gets in a little bit deeper and gets that pressure where we want it. So now, okay, what are the stretches we can do? Well, I'm going to give you actually a static stretch that's going to sort of teach you where your range of hip internal rotation is. So we're starting here, lying flat on our back with our feet just outside our hips. And then we're going to pinch our knees together. And we're going to hold that for about 5 seconds, then we'll come apart. We'll wiggle our feet. I didn't really feel any stretch with that at all. It felt really, really easy. So I'll wiggle my feet out a bit. I'll hold for another 5 seconds. That was still, didn't feel any stretch at all. So I move my feet a little wider, come in, hold for 5 seconds. And now I'm starting to feel a nice gentle stretch. It's kind of deep inside my hips. It's a little bit hard to find or to point, exactly where I feel it. But this feels like a good amount of a little bit of resistance. So I'm going to just hold for 5 seconds, come apart, hold for 5 seconds, and come apart. As I go through, that feeling of that stretch feeling might reduce a little bit. So I'm going to move my feet out a little bit further. But I'm never trying to use my hip muscles to really force myself into more hip internal rotation. I'm really just, giving a little bit of pressure so that I feel that stretch. But I wouldn't, kind of get my feet out here and then, try to use my muscles to crank my knees in together. So you're going to do 10 of those holding for 5 seconds. Now things get kind of interesting. Those are the really basic, tissue quality, some static stretch. Now things get a little more functional. And like I talked about when I was on the ice, this is one that you'll use to not only get that nice active flare, but also when you push across so that you're not letting that leg fold in behind you as you push. So I'm going to come over to the wall here and show you this functional range conditioning technique. At the wall, and I'm kind of in a funny position, so let me show you how I get in here. So I just kind of come my hands and knees. I'm going to put this foot against the wall so that it's in a little bit of hip internal rotation. Then I'll bring this foot out. So I'm sort of half kneeling, but you can see I have a little bit of a single leg butterfly flare. I'm not worried about trying to get my foot flat down. I'm not on the ice. I don't have skates on. I'm not pushing anywhere. I'm just working this hip internal rotation. So there I feel a gentle stretch in my hip, and I'm trying to get my pelvis pointed forward. So it doesn't make sense if I get a really wide flare, but my pelvis is pointed over here. So I'm trying to keep my pelvis pointed straight ahead, although I'm not using my muscles in my other hip to try and crank myself around. I'm just feeling that nice stretch. I'm going to start off by holding that stretch for 15 seconds. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my foot into the wall as if I'm trying to sweep my lower leg back in behind me. So I'm going to start building tension, gradually build tension over time, up to sort of as much force as I can produce. Now this shouldn't be uncomfortable, it shouldn't be painful. You should feel your muscles working. For some of you, your hip's gonna cramp, but it shouldn't give you joint pain or anything like that. So I'm building that tension for 15 seconds. Now for the next 15 seconds, I'm gonna use the opposite muscles, hip rotators, and I'm going to try, you're not gonna see anything happen, but I'm going to try to turn on the muscles that I would use if I was going to lift my foot off the wall. So I'm trying to sweep this lower leg forward, although because I'm in sort of an end range stretch, you're not going to see any movement. You're just going to see me make some funny faces as I try to turn on those muscles, and that will be for 15 seconds. And then at the end of that 15 seconds, I'm not going to back off the stretch at all. I'm just going to relax. I'm going to stop pushing. I'm going to stop pulling. I'm just going to chill here and love life for 15 seconds. And it feels a little stiff when you come out of it. That's normal, but you shouldn't be feeling any hip pain. So then I would repeat that on the other side. So I know that doesn't seem like a lot of stuff, and maybe you're already doing 1 or 2 of those things, but do me a favor and put all these things together and do them consistently for the next week. What I find with like the butterfly challenge, for example, people are emailing me back in 2 days saying, I can't believe my hips already feel that much better on the ice, because we need to cover all the bases. We can't just keep doing the same old stretches over and over and over again, or just do the self-myofascial release with the lacrosse ball, or just do the hip internal rotation stretch. We need to put it together as part of a comprehensive program. If you don't know what the butterfly challenge is, you haven't done it yet, then just go to your app store, search Butterfly Challenge. It's a free 14-day goalie-specific flexibility program. Gives you looser hips, blah, blah, blah. But if you're doing these things, like doing the butterfly challenge or working consistently on the right things and your hip mobility still isn't improving, then it's time to go visit your sport physical therapist to have them look at your hips. Not to say there's a problem or an issue, but have them look at your hips, because if we're doing the right things, the things that typically unlock hip mobility in goalies, and you're not seeing an improvement, then it tells me, hey, what else could be restricting you? It could be a capsular restriction that just requires a bit of manual therapy to loosen up, and then you're off to the races. And you don't even realize that you're missing that flexibility. That flexibility is there, but it's sort of locked up. So it's kind of like a free bonus that, it's like, wow, I didn't even know I could do some of those things. So that's the place to start. If you've already done the butterfly challenge, the next step up, sort of I designed it as a pro-style mobility program. I designed it for goalies who are playing like NCAA D1 or pro hockey, where they actually have really good strength coaches who are giving them good specific training programs, but the mobility part is kind of lacking. So I've made that program. It's called Strategic Mobility for Goalies. You just get it at strategicmobilityforgoalies.com. But yeah, that's the next step. But start with just these few things, or start with that free butterfly challenge, and then look at the improvement. You'll see how much difference it makes. If you've already done the butterfly challenge, leave in the comments below how much you increased your flare over the 2 weeks. The typical is sort of 2 to 4 inches wider butterfly flare, which is, enough to take away sort of 2 puck widths almost of space at the bottom of the net. So it's pretty significant. Otherwise, just like, subscribe, so you know when I post these next videos. I will catch you on the flip side. Keep doing those butterfly saves. Or you can do the kick save, or the 2-pad stack, or a big old windmill. Really, it's up to you. I'm not trying to say you just have to do, you know what I'm trying to say. See ya.